know, we're so fortunate to have storytellers and authors that write beautiful things and people who love to communicate and carry information from a point right A over to a point B. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. And I come to this section. This day is such a beautiful, beautiful fall day, and it's so crisp. This morning when I got up, I could feel how much cooler it was, and I pulled an old robe out and put it around my shoulders because, you know, I'm getting old. In fact, just the other day, I celebrated my 88th birthday. Now, you cannot imagine how this area right here in the center of Alabama, how different it is now from what it was when I was a little girl running around in a coal mining camp and playing and doing things that you would laugh and think were just absolutely unbelievable. But you can't imagine how time makes a difference in everything that happens. Now, this year, I have to admit, has been a challenge to all of us. 2020, and the world has been turned topsy-turvy, upside down. There's not a thing going on today that was like it was even last year, much less in the last 50 years or more. My family, my great-great-great-great-grandfather, they when they're with their cattle and things like that, they didn't take care of them like that. They would feed them and water them and then let them roam. They just went out and grazed in the forest. Well, one morning, Papa went in, that's the grandfather, my great-great-great-great-grandfather came in and told his daughter, who lived there with him and had her 3 little ones, because her husband had been killed in the Civil War, in the Revolutionary War, not the Civil War. And he said, daughter, that cow that was about to calve, and she didn't show up here last night, you go over and see if you can find her. So my great-great-great-grandmother went across looking for sweet old Daisy. There was a wild hog in the woods where she was looking, and they say that the male hogs from the wild hogs are the most ferocious. He came out and killed my grandmother. Such a sad situation. Papa said, I said, Papa, could you remember that? This was my mother's father. He said, Lord, a nurse knows, dear. Says, this was the area where the circuit riding preachers would come once every 4 months. Said, we didn't even have a preacher except Brother Musgrove. Said he did preach of a Sunday, every Sunday, but we decided we'd just dig a grave and bury her right up there on the point. Well, if you walked up to the Musgrove Country Club, and I'll tell you how that happens in another story, but if you did that right now, out behind the tennis court, there's a cemetery that's not a very big place, but that's where my grandmother is buried. And now, I want you to know that Papa says, you know what? I want you to go up there with me in the wagon. Papa and I walked from his place up here down to the end of 19th Street, where there was a barn. And Papa rented a wagon and a mule, and we packed us a lunch, and we went up there and cleaned off. Well, I told all that to let you have an idea of a little bit what life was like, even when I was a little girl. I was about 5 or 6 at the time, and I said, Papa, this is just a wild place here. How in the world? He said, oh, but said that all happened many years later. And he said, but you know what they say about this place? I said, no, sir, what they say sometimes. If you come up here and there at night when the moon is full and you start walking up toward Nauvoo from this area right here, And you can hear, if you're real quiet, you can hear a woman's voice saying, "Daisy, sweet Daisy." And that they say that my grandmother still walks the bank of Blackwater River, all the way up place where the bridge is now. And in fact, they've even said that she walks on the bridge at one time. And this is the time of the year that we talk about, spiritual beings that walk in this land. Our land has a story to tell. And I'm about to tell you one, a little bit longer than it usually is, but it's about a bridge across the river out at Lowell's Park. Now, you and I know if you start from here to go to Birmingham, it's a nice, big superhighway. Well, if you go down to I-22, you can go to Birmingham in 30 minutes. But back when I was just a little girl, it took us a good 3 hours to drive from here to Birmingham. In fact, the first bridge they ever built across Warrior River was an arch that went up and then down, because arches have the power to hold up a vast amount of weight, And indeed, people said that bridge, it didn't even have banisters on the side. It was just a great wooden bridge. And they said when you went across it in a wagon, the bridge would shake and you could see things dropping, and you looked down the edge of that bridge and it looked like it was maybe 100 feet or more down to where the water. And so people said, be careful crossing that bridge. Well, there was a family that lived on the other side of that bridge several miles who had a very beautiful daughter. And indeed, that family was so proud of her. Well, she got an invitation to come over to Cordova, a tiny little mill town right before you get to the river bridge. And they were going to have a great dance. Oh, her mama went to town and bought the finest material she could find, because she made her daughter a beautiful long white gown that went down. And oh, when she was dressed, she was such a beautiful child. And her mother says, "Oh, child, how lovely, but I don't feel right about saying you can go to the dance." Back in those days, people sort of thought dancing might be sinful behavior or something. But Mama, you've got to let me go. You've got me. Mother, I always work hard and I do the things you want. Please, Mother, let me go, please. I don't know. Can you remember, child, you have to get home. You can't stay out and run around like this. And I'll let you go if you promise me. If you promise me and cross your heart and hope to die, promise me that you won't break any rules. And the girl said, "Mama, you know." And so they dressed up. Now the young man had a car. It wasn't the fanciest car you ever saw. Back in those days, it was unusual for anybody to have a car. But it was one afternoon when the dance was going to be, and it was the coldest afternoon you've ever seen. Well, come late in the day, the sun went behind the clouds and it began to rain and snow, and it wasn't long till the snow began to form and out of the rain, and it just kept getting worse. And Mama said, "Oh, daughter, don't go. Don't go." Mama, we'll be careful. We'll be home. I promise you. And I always keep my promises. And Mother agreed. So finally. And the young man came to pick her up, and he had her a fine bouquet to wear on her wrist, and she was dressed in so pretty. And Mama said, "Now, daughter, Lisbeth Browning, listen to me. You get home before 1 o'clock. Now, you can stay out that late because it's special, but you must be home." And Lisbeth smiled and says, "Mama, I promise you I'll be home by 1 o'clock. And you know, and I know, I always keep my promises." And so she and the young man left to drive. Oh, the weather's so bad, and they started up over that old shaky bridge to go across where they'd turn to the left and go down to the little mill town of Cordova. And he said, you know what, Elizabeth? This place, this old bridge feels like it ain't going to hold us up some of the times. And she looked out and looked down and she said, whew, it looks like it's forever from here down to where the water is. And feel how cold that you can just feel the dampness reaching up, like hands reaching up to pull you off the bridge. Well, they went on down to the dance, and I have to tell you, they had a marvelously wonderful time. And they didn't think one thing about what weather was, and they didn't think one thing about the promises that they had made. In fact, they were young people, and they enjoyed their life, and they were having a good, wonderful time. Well, about 12:30, Mama began to worry and walked the floor and listened. Oh, I know she's not going to make it, and I'll have to punish her some way. Oh, I know this is not going to happen. And she was so worried. Well, sure enough, when it dawned on them that time was passing fast, they ran out and got in the car and started back to the bridge, dreading the crossing over the bridge. Oh, it was frozen over with ice. And they started to turn up, and it kind of slid back. And they started up, and it kind of slid back. Well, in the meantime, the time was going up. There was a man over in Jasper that got a call from Birmingham because he worked in Birmingham. The road wasn't even paved at that time, and he knew it would take it. They said, hurry, the machine has broken down and can't nobody fix it but you. And his boss said, buddy, you better get here, because if you don't get here and fix it, we can't go to work tomorrow. And if we can't go to work tomorrow, we're going to be ruined. In fact, I'll fire you if you don't get here. And so he thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And he said, well, I've packed me up a thermos bag of coffee, or kind of fix me up a box to carry with me in case I get stranded aside the road. Oh, husband, I hate for you to go over there. It's such an awful night for a man to be out. So she packed him up. She took a big old fluffy blanket, something like this, and except it was a big old one, and put it in the bottom, and then she packed him a lunch, and she packed him a thermos full of coffee, and she's put it right over in the back seat. She said, now, if you get stranded and pulled over the side of the road, just get that blanket out of the back of the car, wrap yourself up so as you won't freeze to death. And so the man went down, dreading going across the river bridge, dreading it no end. And so he got to the edge of the bridge, and he started to pull up, and he, like the young folks, and he didn't, of course, didn't see any sign of cars or anything, but he began to slip back, each back. Here he kept going a little further. He kept hearing that his boss man said, if you don't get back here, you're going to be fired. Well, he began to worry about that no end. And so, indeed, he finally got up to the top, the very top of the archway. And sure enough, just as you're predicting, the car began to inch this way, and it began to inch that way. And young'uns, I hate to tell you this, one edge of the back wheel got kind of caught on the edge of the bridge, and sure enough, it slid, and the whole car with the boy and girl in it went 100 feet down to the cold, cold water, and down deep under where the bridge was cold and where the water was deep. And they began to struggle and to scream and try to get out. And sure enough, well, back at home, the mother's walking the floor and crying because it was nigh on to 1 o'clock. And she thought, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. And so indeed, But the man kept driving. Well, now, it had been some 30 minutes since the time he first came up on the bridge, since the boy and girl had fallen in. And over by the edge of the bridge, on the further side, stood a beautiful young woman, all dressed in a long white dress. And look, she had flowers on her arm, and she was crying hysterically. "Oh, please, please stop. Please help me. Please stop." And the man thought, well, I haven't got time to stop for this young girl. I've got to go on. What do you think it's going up? And he pulled on finally. He started to pull and come on up the hill at Argo. And he thought, but I can't leave that poor child standing there freezing and shaking and crying. So he stopped and he reached over and rolled down the window. And he said, "Young lady, what on earth are you doing standing out here in the middle of the night without no coat on?" He said, "You're going to have pneumonia." And she said, "Please, sir, would you take me home? I promised her. I promised her." He said, "What do you mean you promised her?" She said, "Please, please, just take me home." And he said, "Where do you live?" Well, she just pointed up the road toward Argo. And he says, "Well, I really haven't got time, but I can't leave you stranded out here in the middle of the night. There ain't no other cars coming by here." And so he says, "Get in the car." And she got in the car and closed. He said, "Let me turn up this heat as high as it goes. It don't get very warm in here." "I know." And he reached around in the back and he reached in that box and got that big old blanket out. And he took that blanket out and spread it out and wrapped it around the girl's back. And he said, "Girl, you're as cold as death itself. What in the world is going? Please hurry, hurry, hurry. I promised her and it's almost time. It's almost time." And he said, "My sakes alive." So he kept on. Well, right as you remember how that highway, as it comes up the hill right before you get to the limit of Summiton, she said, "There!" And he looked over on the hillside, and there was a house over there about 2 or 3 miles off the road with every light a-burning. And he looked, and it weren't a road there. It was just a pig trail, and it was full of ice and sleet and snow and ruts. And he thought, if I get off this highway, I ain't never going to get back on again. But look, she's got on fancy dancing shoes or something. So he turned and went slipping and sliding. Past a little church house over here on the side, just a little frame church house, and it was all kind of sad looking and graves around it and everything. But he went on past, and they came to a place where there was a fence across the road with and he says, "I do believe that fence is closed." He said, "I'm going to go open it up, and we'll go on up the road to the house." And he jumped out and went over, and the fence was locked. He shook it 2 or 3 times, and he couldn't get it to come. He said, "The girl will know where the key is." And he turned around and he walked back over and he said, "Young lady, where's the key? The gate's closed," he said. She said, "Please hurry, please hurry." So he went back again and he couldn't find it, and he went back and said, well, she wasn't there. And he thought, what has that child done? She was in such a hurry to get home. She's jumped the fence, and I can't rest unless I know she's home safe. So he climbed over the fence and started following. And he went up the hill. It was turned this way and turned that way, and the snow had increased, and the sleet was coming down in sheets. And he thought, look up there, old house with every light on. And he went stomping up the steps, angry that he was going to be fired for being late. And he knocked at the door. And the door opened, and there stood this old woman, old as me or older, still had her hair up in curlers and out in bathrobe on. "Oh, sir, I know you must be a good man." "Well, did she make it in the house all right? That's just the only thing I'm checking. I just didn't want to leave her stranded out." "No, she don't ever make it home," said the old woman. He said, "What do you mean?" he said, "You are Miss Robinson. I saw your name on the mailbox." "Yes, I'm Miss Robinson, but my sweet Elizabeth, she don't make it ever home. But it happens every year." "What?" said the man, who didn't believe a word. He was not a real spiritual person. "What are you talking about?" She said, "Sure enough," says it. She never makes it inside. Happened just 20 years ago tonight. My sweet Elizabeth, oh, she was so precious and so pretty. She left this here house to go to a dance down at the village of Cordova, and said she promised me that she'd be home by 1 o'clock. And she said, but she never makes it home. Well, the man got real angry because he thought somebody had planned a Halloween trick or something. He said, "Oh, Miss Browning, don't make such a do of that. I'm sorry about your trouble, but I might get fired for what's going on here tonight, and I would hate for you to be responsible for that." So he turned around and went stomping down the hillside, angry as he could be that they would play such a trick on a feller and maybe cause him to lose his job. He climbed over that gate and he got into the car and cranked it up and turned the car around and went slipping and sliding down that muddy road till he got right even with the church. And he thought, you know what? If that girl was buried, she'd be buried close to her house. And he stopped the car and reached over and undid the glove compartment and got out a flashlight. He went walking across the road to the little church house, kind of a bedraggled old church house. It looked like it'd been there for 50 years or more. And he began starting right up near the front door. And he began to flash on every tombstone. And sure enough, way over at the back of the church, underneath a tree that was all hung over with Spanish moss and such like as that, there he saw another tombstone. And when he flashed the light on it, you know what it said? Miss Elizabeth Browning. And it gave her birthday and her death date 20 years ago that night. But you ain't gonna believe this. He knowed before he ever saw what was written on that tombstone, because there, draped across the tombstone, was the blanket that he had put around Elizabeth when she first got in the car that night. So, boys and girls, you know Halloween is coming up. And you know there are bridges here in Walker County that have great stories of spirits that walk in the night and people who help the spirits. So if you don't want to be the next person to take Miss Elizabeth Browning home one more time, it's best you just stay at home and trick and treat some of your neighbors when they might come back. But remember this, there are more things in this world that we don't know about, the things that we do know about. The good Lord gives us a lot of things to look for, but he tells us, be spiritual people. Know that there are things that you do not understand. So if you don't want to be Elizabeth Browning's next person to take her home, then you stay at home. But know that spirituality is a thing that is with an individual. There are few, every one of you have stories like I told you about Papa and me going to find my grandmother's grave on a wagon and a mule. Things like that are going on. And when you get up to be my age, and I sit on my front porch and rock and tell, and I share these stories with you, I'm telling you about things that I remember that are special to me. And because I'm a spiritual person, Sometimes I think the wind whispers to me a special little tale about something like when my great-grandmother had been to Atlanta and came to tell us goodbye after she was already dead, and about everybody in Walker County knows about what happens at Crybaby Hollow. If you don't know, inquire around, because I used to be fairly sure that Crybaby Hollow was just down between Jasper and Tuscaloosa in a place called Brown's Bridge. Go looking for spirits and write your stories down. Talk to your grandparents and your great-grandparents and find these stories and share with them and enjoy them very, very much. Thank you for listening. And next time when I come, I hope I can share with you a couple of stories from the greatest writer, in my opinion, in American literature, named Mark Twain. Oh, he has fantabulous characterization. He can tell you and build a scene that you can draw in your mind. He can tell you about meeting old Injun Joe and sweet Becky Thatcher. Look, if you haven't read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, check it out and begin reading, because I'm going to pick some ideas out of it and share with you, because it's my very favorite book of all. Thank you.